How are you? My name's Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you're tuned in to watch The Rational Male 101, episode 43, where we're going to be talking about regret. And I am joined by the godfather of the manosphere, the cult leader himself, Mr. Rollo Tomasi, The Rational Male. Rollo, what's going on?
Good. I'm feeling real good today. I had a good leg workout before I did this, and now I'm a little sore, but I'm ready to go. I am now I guess I'm the grand poobah of the manosphere now. We did a really interesting show yesterday. I think this would be what we're going to talk about today is going to be a nice segue from what we were talking about yesterday on Rule Zero.
All right, so we want to get into regret today, and there's a couple of different angles.
Rejection and regret. Yeah.
Rejection. Okay, and we need to talk about the difference too. Okay. Yeah. Rejection is temporary. Regret can last a lifetime. Mm-hmm. So, and there's similar phrases like that as well. What really inspired this topic? What's our catalyst for today's show?
There's a few things. Okay. We I think as a collective, as the manosphere as a collective, we get sort of tarred with the epithets of being losers or being incels, or you guys. That's usually the first thing from like a quote unquote normie or somebody from the mainstream says. Well, if they hear something about the red pill, or if they hear something about the manosphere, or those pickup artists, or those MGTOW guys, or those MRAs, that's another thing. They always want to say, well, these are guys who just can't get laid. These are guys who've been rejected, and they believe that the world owes them a girlfriend, or that yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's the first thing that happens, especially after you get you have one of these incidents like the I don't know, a mass shooter or something like that, or some sort of I think like recently the new Joker movie has come out, and they've been spreading these warnings. And I know that this is true for the U.S. military, as they or the FBI, I guess, was passing out these warnings about the possibility of another Aurora style shooting with what was it, James Holmes, who shot up the Aurora. It was actually at a Batman movie too, and that it is like something about the movie, or I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know, but apparently it's sort of like this. I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but at least this is the concern. The concern is that it's some sort of revenge fantasy, that this guy gets rejected so much that he takes matters into his own hands and he becomes the Joker. He becomes a villain because he's really misunderstood, or he tried to do his best and he just got hammered flat by life. And it's something that's concerning people, because they think that this is sort of like a call to arms, or if it's some sort of like anthem, I guess, for incels or MGTOWs, and I know that there's a separation between the two, and we talked about that yesterday on Rule Zero. But really what it comes down to is when the normal society, when the mainstream, I'm just going to say it, the mainstream society or the village sees something like this, their automatic presumption is that these guys got rejected. And rejection is a big part, I think, of, well, first of all, being a guy. And this is one of the questions that I had here in the description here is, as a man, you are going to be rejected you're going to have to deal with rejection a whole lot more than women will. And women are going to lose their minds when I say something like that. But think about it this way. Men are supposed to be the ones who are the initiators. We're the ones who are supposed to have the ideas. We're the one who's supposed to ask the woman out on a date. A lot of women right now, like I've criticized this. I've talked about this before. It's like I really feel like we're sort of leaning into what's called Sadie Hawkins' world, where we're going to expect women to go and approach the men. And that's not the natural order of things. That's not how we evolve. It's usually men display and women choose. And that's at least in the younger days. Now, when a man gets to a point where he can become a primary sexual selector later on in his peaks, sexual
35 plus,
then it shifts. But even still, the guy still has to have some sort of excellence. He has to have some sort of qualifiers that show he's good with his burden of performance. That's another reason why men are going to face rejection more than women, because men have a burden of performance. Women just are. Men must become. So what do you become, and do you measure up? Now, who are you measuring up to? Like when people give me grief about like the idea of the burden of performance, they want to say, well, you shouldn't call it the burden of performance. You should call it the challenge of performance, or you should like say it in a more positive way. But I don't really see how you can do that when it is men who must become, and women are. They're the ones that are primarily are the ones that are selecting. So when I have problems with women, like you and I have talked about this before, when I talk about women selecting, when I talk about women being the primary sexual selectors, there's something that men have to possess, and it's not just with women, it's with other men as well. So if you want to be involved in a tribe, or if you want to qualify for a job, or if you want to be part of a sports team, or you want to be in the military, you are based on your performance. You are based on your, at least presumptively, you're based on your merit. Now, obviously there's qualifiers to that. There's things like nepotism, and there's other, the old boys clubs and that stuff. But generally, men have a burden of performance, and they've got to find some way to rise to the top of that hierarchy, that male dominance hierarchy. Now, what you're doing it for, we can talk about that. But the thing is right now, I'm just saying is that there is a burden of performance, and men have to find some way to rise to some level of that dominance hierarchy, whether that's at the top or that's at the bottom or somewhere in between. As a man, you are going to face more rejection than women do because of that dynamic. Because
are you talking strictly in sexual terms, or in life in general?
In life terms in general. So men are going to face more rejection. Not just, okay, we're going to talk about, later today, we're going to talk about how to deal with rejection from women. But as a general, life rule for men are going to face rejection more than women do, because there's always going to be, college, there's going to be military, there's going to be sports teams, there's going to be whatever you need to qualify for on a merit in a meritorious manner, like in a dominance hierarchy, to say who's the best and who's the leader, right? Who gets to be the leader? Who gets to be the guy who picks all the team members? Who gets to be the guy who is the leader? Well, that's based on your male and your masculine burden of performance. And people will say, well, how come, don't women have to face that too? Yeah, they do, but not to the same level of intensity that men do.
Well, a couple things here. First of all, I have noticed over the years, when it comes to radio or media in general, salespeople, females tend to be the most successful. And I've had more than one lady tell me that part of the reason is because they've dealt with so much rejection as chicks over the years. Now, one of the things that I noticed early on, and this actually helped me understand why I reacted the way I did when I got fired from my first job. You mentioned that you had dealt with a lot of rejection. Now, I don't have a notch count anywhere near yours, and I don't claim to, but I never had a girl break up with me. I broke up with every girl I ever dated. I called it quits. Nobody ever pulled it on me. I pulled it on them. And I think that is part of the reason I had such a hell of a time when I got fired from my first radio job. I went into a dangerous tailspin, because it was a hit against my pride. I had been rejected.
I got zeroed out.
Oh man, it zeroed out big time. And it took me almost 6 months to find. I mean, I was dangerous. People didn't want to be around me. My family, I'm snapping on everybody. And the thing is, I'm pissed. The guy I'm pissed off at, being pissed off does nothing to him. It's actually hurting me and the people around me that I love. It was at that point I learned I have to be able to, I don't know if you want to call it compartmentalize or whatever, but I didn't forgive him. I got over it because I had to move on. I had more important things to do.
Right.
Part of the reason that I had such a tough time with it was I had not dealt with a lot of rejection. That's why, you're going to be a lot more bulletproof in that department. Well, now I'm much more, because I've dealt with getting fired a couple times.
Yeah, well, I want to throw this out there real quickly too. Is Chest Rockwell says women are solipsistic and view every rejection as personal, but not necessarily their fault. Now, I'm glad you brought this up when you were talking about how you were the guy that broke up with all your girlfriends and stuff. What's going to rub women the wrong way about me saying that men face more rejection? I mean, statistically, like life-wise, men are going to face more rejection. Women, when they face rejection, tend to dwell on it more, because
Oh my God.
So that's why when I say something like that, it's going to sting a little bit more, because their mind is going to reflexively go back to that point where they got rejected by the alpha that they really, because think about it this way, and this is again from an intersexual dynamics perspective, when women are rejected by a guy, I always tell, I've told guys this, I said, the highest form of demonstrating higher value is to walk away from a woman, is to drop her, to dump her, because what that does is it messes with women's heads, because women's sexual strategy is based on hypergamy, which is all based on doubt. Is he the best that I can do? So when a guy breaks up with a woman, that triggers that hypergamous doubt. Like maybe she thought, oh, she was just going to, get rid of this guy. She's done. Maybe she broke up with him in her head 6 months ago and she's planning to move on. She just hasn't done it yet. He walks away from her. And now all of that 6 months of planning to get away from him is thrown into doubt, because now he's somebody that maybe somebody else wants to get with. And maybe he is the best that you can do. And it's whether it is or it isn't, doesn't matter. It's the question in the back of that woman's head saying, I wonder if he is, I wonder if he's not. And so because women think, their interpretive process is instinct, emotion, and reason. For men, it's instinct, reason, and emotion.
Instinct, emotion, and reason.
So they
in that order,
primarily in that order. That's the natural proclivity of women. I'm not saying it can't be reversed through learning, but women's natural proclivity is to go from instinct to emotion and then to reason. And so what happens is when they feel that rejection, they interpret that rejection through that emotional filter. And that, like when we talk about how women fight in the psychological, rather than like men fight in the physical, women fight in the psychological. Women can hold a grudge a whole lot longer than men can. Women, remember when we talk about how women will do stamp collecting or whatever it is, the kitchen sinking or whatever we were talking about that one time, that's all based in that emotional sense, is that emotional interpretive process. So when I say women, I'm not saying women don't face rejection. Obviously they do, but I think that they hang on to the feelings of that and they relive it because they interpret it through that emotional process rather than the irrational process, which is exactly what you just said, is that once you got to a point where you're like, you lost your job or whatever, you're fired from your job. Yeah, you feel that for a minute, but then your rational mind kicks in and you go, you know what? I'm still confident in what I do. I have generated, I'm confident enough in myself that I can snap back from this. And I have generated money in the past. I've generated status in the past. I've generated all this stuff in the past. I have options. I know that even if I don't, I can generate more options. And so that's the resource that you tap into, that rational resource.
Here's the deal. My pride took a blow. Okay.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, knowing what I know today, in fact, just probably about 7 months afterwards, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I tripled my income. My next job, I tripled my freaking income. Living well is the best revenge. Screw you and everybody else out there. I'm going to show you who's got game and who doesn't.
Right. And you use that to your best
Absolutely.
advantage.
That's right. You take that rage, you channel that rage, and then you achieve something which you wouldn't even have tried beforehand. So
now I'm gonna sort of delve off into one other aspect of all this here is, and if anybody has read, I believe it's in my first book, but if anybody has read I have a post or essay, and I think it's called Truth to Power is what I called it. And so here's a little secret. This is at least something that I believe, right? Is that there's no such thing as contentment for human beings, and we're not designed to be content. So how we deal with discontent is really what ends up defining us as human beings. So like when I went off to, like, there was a time where I wanted to go back to college and I had to go get my degree, and I was 32 years old when I went back. I went to college kind of late, but I knew I had to do that. I knew that was something that needed to be, an achievement in my life. And then when once I got my degrees, I was like, I thought, well, I'll be content once I have these degrees. And you're content for 3 months. And then you're like, okay, what's the next best? Now I'm at this plateau. How do I get to the next plateau? And what I think is this, is I believe that human beings are not meant to be content, and that we are always in various states of discontent. But how we deal with that discontent is what sort of makes us or breaks us. So you can
the
deal with
the day I become content, the day I become complacent, and it's for an extended period of time. You know what the next chapter is? It's called death.
Yes.
I'm done. It's
the day
over. When I see people driving around in pickup trucks with "I'm retired," you know what that says to me? I quit. I'm out of the game. I completely quit.
Yes.
It's over.
The moment you can look in the mirror and be happy with what you see is the moment you're sunk. So what I mean by that, though, is that you need to be able to find ways to deal with discontent creatively rather than destructively, because a lot of guys will deal with discontent destructively. And that's what I wanted to get to for the rest of, like, to sort of segue us into the bit about rejection for guys. We're just, and the reason that we are talking about this, or I think the reason we came back to this, because we were going to do a show on rejection before, but then that was a time when YouTube decided to to screw us with the hangouts. So this is kind of our makeup issue, or our makeup episode. But we were originally coming back to this because there was some new confession, or there's a new video or something like that with Alex Manassian, the guy who had commandeered that van and ran it through a busy mall in Canada.
They actually released the police interrogation tape.
Oh, that's
where he tells them the reason as to why he did all this.
And that was because he'd been rejected by girls. He'd been like, he was part, and this is what they said in the articles, or at least from what I heard, is that he did what he did because he needed to take action. He felt like he'd been rejected so much, or he's part of this incel community. And I know I can think of at least two different communities.
Incel meaning involuntary celibates.
Involuntary celibates. And I'm glad. Yeah, we do need to sort of clarify that.
Because we've got people coming in who are new to the whole concept and everything. So they're not everybody's up to speed on the jargon. Now,
here's the thing is, I'm not going to say incels are necessarily MGTOWs or anything else. So let's just clear the air right there. I'm not going that way. But I will say this, is that within the incel communities, there are other classifications for guys who are like, there's guys who are what's called volcels, like voluntary celibates rather than involuntary celibates. And then there's whatever, a lot of the black pill community, the guys who just sort of give up and sort of just go real despondent, tend to find themselves in these communities. So you've got this community of guys who are just pretty much just getting together to commiserate. And it gets to a point where that rejection becomes something that the only way that they can deal with that rejection becomes something destructive, not constructive. They go the other way. And Rich Cooper has talked about this a lot. He's really fond of saying, do the work. Well, there's a reason for that, so that you can take that discontent and build something on it, to use it. Like you were saying before, you got angry, you use that anger as a fuel to change yourself in some way, to be better than you were.
Society tells you that anger is bad. It's toxic masculinity at its core. Anger is something that can be channeled. It is a power that can be channeled for good. It can be channeled for achievement. It can actually take you to a whole new level if you use it properly.
Yes. Yeah. I agree about that. And here's another thing is, like, for men, because of the way we're wired, and because of because we have got higher, we got higher testosterone than women, we tend to convert our negative emotions into anger, whereas women tend to either focus it on hysteria or some sort of crying or some sort of emotion.
Our automatic default, guys, and it's maybe because of testosterone, maybe not, but with women with estrogen, what do they do first? They cry. When they're frustrated, they cry. Okay, those are our automatic defaults. It doesn't mean it's the only way you can react, but it's something that's hardwired in. So I totally agree.
People are going to say, they're going to go, well, there are guys whose automatic default response is to cry. I'm like, yeah. Because they've been taught that is the proper response. Because we live in a female correct society, we teach, or we want to condition, that's blue pill conditioning. We want to teach our boys to have female responses. We want to teach our boys to go from instinct to emotion and reason, rather than instinct, reason, and emotion. Right. But what you're saying is very true. And that's another thing, is one of the reasons why women presume men are angry all the time. And this is very well researched. Women tend to overestimate anger in men. And there's a reason for that, because in our ancestral past, if women didn't pick up on the sign that a guy was angry or a guy was potentially hostile, those women usually died, because they didn't realized that the guy was more dangerous than they actually had thought he was. So when a man has an emotional outburst, and usually that's in terms of anger or hostility, women will tend to overestimate that because of, it's an adaptation, it's a survival adaptation to do so. So even when you're not angry, women will interpret you as being angry or having the potential to be angry.
Here's the thing with me. When I'm genuinely angry with a woman, wife, daughter, coworker, mm-hmm. I don't vocalize it. I go quiet. And that, I think, to people is more frightening than if I were to latch on. Here's the problem, though. Anytime I'm quiet, is he mad? Is Pat mad? Is Dad mad? What's Dad mad about? No, Dad's been talking for 5 freaking hours on the radio this morning. Dad's voice is had it. Dad needs mm-hmm. a little downtime, a little quiet time. Mm-hmm. But they assume because, I've sort of almost trained them that way, mm-hmm. that when I am upset, and part of the reason when I do get upset, a lot of times I keep everything inside because I don't want to say something. Listen, I don't want to say something that they're going to regret. Not me, right. But they. I've never regretted not saying something. I've actually gone through periods where I've talked to people for a period of time, and it's not some manipulative tool. It's because you really don't want to hear what I think right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would hurt too much. And then I give myself that 24-hour waiting period. I never make a rash decision based on the moment. Mm-hmm. Give yourself 24 hours, because 24 hours later, things can look a hell of a lot different.
Right. And you know what that is? That's you switching the script. That's you going to your rational mind away from your emotional mind. Right. And women think that there's something defective about men because they don't interpret in the same way that they do. Now you did it the right way because you understand yourself and you understand how you process negative emotion. Right. Good. So if that's your policy or whatever, if you can come to that, like most guys, when they lose control, when they get angry, when they get hostile, they get violent, it's because that emotional side has overridden the rational side.
And there's things that will allow your emotions to override, including alcohol, including drugs, including, certain prescription medications that are going to,
Yeah. Okay. So obviously there's chemical ways to do that. So, getting back to the topic though, I think, and I'm writing an essay on this right now about rejection. I've written about this in the past. If you look in the description here, I've got one of my, seminal posts, which is called Rejection and Regret. And I sort of lifted that from Pook. Okay, if anybody knows who...
The Book of Pook. In fact, I just said that my son's going on a 3-hour drive from 29 Palms to Camp Pendleton today. He says, you got something good to listen to? And I sent him our show from last week, and I sent him the Book of Pook, which is audio and written as well.
Yeah, that's great. Anyways, in there, one of Pook's sort of seminal quotes is, rejection is better than regret. And a lot of guys, because we deal with rejection so much, I think really the reason why you're seeing a lot of these emotional outbursts, or you're seeing like a guy like Alex Manazian or the incel community take the actions that they are, is because they haven't had the occasion, whether by their father or by a strong, conventionally masculine male, to teach them how to deal with rejection. That it's not necessary. I mean, you're going to be rejected for most of your life. Learn how to let it roll off of you. Learn to put up a barrier of some sorts so that when you are rejected, that it's not an attack on your ego. I've talked about this a million times in my book, but when I say the word, or when I use the term ego investment, what that means is that when you have a belief, whether it's religious or political or just life-wise, we have some sort of belief that you feel so strongly about that belief, you invest your ego in it. So an attack on that belief is not just an attack on the actual belief itself or the religion or whatever. It's an attack on you because you feel that it is a part of you, a part of your ego, right? So what happens, I think, is when guys get rejected, there's a little bit of that ego investment in that they believe they really wanted something to work out for them. I'm just going to couch this in terms of guys approaching women and not fit, and then getting rejected by women. They tend to use that as sort of they allow that injury, that rejection, to injure their egos, because everybody wants, you say there's a psychological idea, I guess, or psychological idea that's we tend to do what's called ego protection.
Right.
Well, when you're vulnerable like that, when you're like asking for intimate acceptance from a woman and then that woman rejects you, it's almost impossible, particularly for guys who aren't prepared for that or don't have any way of saying, hey, you know what, it's not me, I'm still great, still got confidence. If she's not into me, there's other girls that might be as well. That's hard to teach a guy when every time he's approached and every time he has tried to get to intimacy with a woman, he's been rejected. Now, even the best pickup artists in the world don't have a 100% success rate. In fact, if you had a 4% success rate as a PUA, you're doing pretty good. But it's that learning process, is that persistence and that consistency in it. But I think one of the reasons why we see this new generation of incels, this new generation of guys, is because they don't have that masculine conventional wisdom incorporated in their lives to help them snap back from rejection, to help them build a thick skin, to help them understand that just because they were rejected is not necessarily an attack on them, and that they can go build. And again, what are you going to do? Use that rejection, use those feelings to build yourself up instead of tear yourself down. And I think that that's the direction that a lot of these guys go.
Here's a little side note on that. I'm the oldest of 13. That's the one place growing up in my household, the way we showed affection to everybody was ripping on them. The more they ripped on you, the more they loved you. So if somebody new came to our house and we started picking on them, it wasn't a rejection but it was actually the way that we showed that we like people. The more we ripped on somebody. Now, if you've never been exposed to that kind of stuff, it can be devastating. I mean, you could be in the corner crying because I can't believe I'm being insulted by all these people.
Yeah. That's another thing, is I think that a lot of guys in this day and age they think that like that, ribbing a guy or ripping on a guy or what locker room stuff or whatever, there's that kind of intrasexual testing that goes on between men. And so if you're insulting the guy or you're like, you're messing with the guy, right? I think that there's a generational like misstep of some sort where guys don't get that and they can't distinguish that from bullying. They think that, well, if guys are whipping me with a towel in the locker room, that means he doesn't like me, it's bullying, or he's hazing me. That is a lack of understanding of how male nature works because of that blue pill conditioning, again, to make them more female correct. So that when they get into those positions, when they meet a guy who's just sort of messing with them, that's how guys are. That's how we establish a hierarchy. That's how we understand, are you going to be on my team, right? That's how, if you can't handle this, what else can you handle, kind of thing. So
I went to a powwow here 2 summers ago, Pawnee powwow. It's the homecoming. And I met a guy by the name of Marcus. I had never met him before in my life. Nice guy. One of the first comments out of his mouth was, he says, how much Synthanol would I have to take to get my jaw to look square like yours?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, are you a dick? Are you trying to start a fight? But he wasn't. That was his way. It was like me and my brothers. He was just jerking me around. But it meant that he accepted me, that he liked me, not that he was trying to start a fight.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of sad too, because I talk to guys all the time who say, I have more girlfriends than I have guy friends, or I don't understand how to relate with guys. And they think that the more that they identify with girls, or that the more successful they're going to be with women. But again, that just makes them another girlfriend to women, not a sexual threat to them.
I don't want to be anybody's girlfriend. What's the line you have if they have girlfriends and boyfriends? If you're not sleeping with her,
you're her girlfriend. Yes. And I feel like I should clarify that too. Is like a lot of guys will say, well, that that just means you want to have sex with a lot of girls, or that only loose girls are like that. And I was like, no, what it is it means that when I say women have girlfriends and boyfriends, and if you're not having sex with her, then you are her girlfriend, because what happens is women will relate to that guy as an intrasexual friend. So if you are relating to her as a girl, then she's going to see you and relate back to you. Even if she's not consciously doing it, her hindbrain is going to listen to what you're saying and perceive you as being one of her girlfriends, because that's the only frame of reference that women have for friendship, is their intrasexual friendships, which is their girlfriends. I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the rejections that I wanted to cover here is the "let's just be friends" rejection. And I'm glad
let's not say we did. See, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Well, they're playing a game with you, man. They're just stringing you along. It's gonna be one of these deals like, well, if you don't find somebody by 30 and I don't find somebody by 30, let's get together.
Well, what I hear, and I've got this written down here. So here's okay. So I wrote this down because when all this kind of comes out, when happens is when a guy like Alex Benazian loses his mind, or something happens, or a guy kills himself because he broke up with his girl, he got zeroed out by his girlfriend, or you hear about these guys who are like the husbands who go through divorce, and they either kill themselves or they kill themselves, their wives, and their kids, that kind of stuff. The first thing out of most like mainstream heads is, you're not owed sex. Why can't men just believe that they don't have an entitlement or a right to a woman's body? And it's like, that's not the point. That's not what these guys are thinking. They don't think they're entitled to that. In fact, if they thought they were entitled to it, they would just be rapists and they would just go out and do whatever they want. They wouldn't kill themselves if they thought they were entitled to.
First of all, the whole premise of marriage is sex. For this reason, not for a couple of reasons. For this reason, a man shall leave his mother and father. You know, the two are going to be joined as one. The whole concept of marriage is to get together to have kids. It's based on sex. And for the woman, after, a couple years down the road, go, well, I'm really not interested in that. Or is it the other line that this drives me nuts? Okay, that's all you care about. I'm only good for one thing. So no, whereas a guy, I'm thinking to myself, no, actually, you know what? You're above every other chick on the planet right now, because you're the one. You're the one that I choose to have sex with. Everybody else is just, well, they're girlfriends, I guess, right? Yeah. So the mind thinking, it doesn't even click with them how important or significant that really is.
Yeah. Now, I've talked about how men and women have differing concepts of love, like how they approach love from different angles, right? Like men tend to do it idealistically, women tend to be more opportunistic. So when you have a man and a woman, and a man makes the approach, and he's basically saying, accept me as an intimate, accept me intimately. Now that woman can either say, yeah, hey, I'm all into it, or she can reject you. But what guys don't know is that when they're making that approach, they're doing it from that same idealistic concept of love. That if he qualifies, if he does the things that he's supposed to do, if he jumps through if he follows all the rules that women give to beta guys, that he should, I've checked off all these checklists. How come you don't love me? How come you're not into me? I've done everything that anybody ever told me to do to get a girlfriend, and it's still not working. Why is that? Most of the guys who are in like communities like PUA hate, or which changed to slut hate after Elliot Rodgers, the Elliot Rodgers shooting. But these guys have done everything. They will tell you that'll be the first thing out of their mouths, is they will say, I've done everything. These guys who get into what's called looks maxing, right? They'll get in there, they'll literally go get plastic surgery and build themselves up and do everything within their power to get to look like the guy that gets the girls, the guy that ends up, like the quarterback of the high school football team, right? They will do everything that they can do to get that girl, because they want that connection. They want to do that. Now, of course, they're, most MGTOWs and most anybody, even Red Pill, will say they're just doing that because that's what they want. That's their goal. Their goal is female approval. But really, they're doing it from an idealistic perspective, because they want to. I mean, most guys, men are deductive problem solvers. So when a guy wants sex, and he believes that love and sex are an idealistic proposition, what that guy's going to do is try to solve that problem. Right. Reproduction, sex is a problem for men to solve. And so unless you understand women's nature, unless you understand that there is a disconnect between your concept of love and a woman's opportunistic concept of love, you're just going to be playing first of all, you're playing her game, but you're playing it in such a way that is your ultimate goal, rather than you becoming your ultimate goal, which is what women want you to be. They want you to not to be your best for them. They want you to be your best for yourself, and then they have to follow on to you rather than you following the other way.
Right.
So when it comes to rejection, I've talked to women about this. I wanted to throw this out there. And one of these girls said this. It's like, if you nicely rejected a guy by asking him to leave you alone, and he actually does just that, it's probably your ego telling you he feels dejected because he's not giving you the same level of attention he did before he was rejected by you. So what I think that the first part of dealing with rejection, and I want to actually give some guys some sort of concrete ideas here. Well, the first thing about rejection that most guys need to understand is understanding that it is a rejection. So when a woman says, let's just be friends, that's not an offer for you to actually be friends. That's just her easy way out. That's the most courteous.
She doesn't have the guts. Yeah, she doesn't have the guts to be straight up with you.
Yeah, and so
I'd rather have somebody say I'm not interested than say let's be friends.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And say, and I've always told guys this. I said, if you get into that position, understand that that is a rejection.
Right.
Most guys don't, because most guys approach they're coming at it from a blue pill angle. They're coming at it from what they think should work. And then when it doesn't, they don't understand why. Then they get the rejection that says, let's just be friends. And then they say this, there's a possibility that I could get in there later if I just do some other things. If I guess I didn't meet all of the qualifications.
What is it from now? Dumb and Dumber, where he says, so you're saying I might have a chance, right? One of those things, right?
Right. So what happens is these guys, and they become what we call stereotypical beta orbiters. They tried to get in there. They tried their chance. It's what I call a sniper mentality. It's these guys who will try to prove that they'd be the best boyfriend in the world. They try to prove their quality to the woman. I've got, I make a lot of money. I've got good status. I've got all this great stuff. I have really great potential. They make their approach. They try to become intimate with a woman, and the woman rejects them. But the way that she rejects them is by saying, let's just be friends. And by doing that, what that says to a guy's subconscious, is to a man's hindbrain, is that, so there's a chance, right? So if I do better, then I'm going to qualify for you to be intimate with me. And unless you can unplug from the matrix, unless you can become red pill aware, most guys get trapped in that negative feedback loop. So they just end up becoming this source of attention. Women still want that attention, irrespective of whether she rejected you or not.
Let me throw something in on this, okay? Because, and this has changed now, especially with Me Too, okay? And the fact that a lot of younger guys really don't have any communication skills or games. But in the past, for a lot of women, this was a game. They're going to give you an initial rejection. They're not going to initially accept you because they want you to play. They stop and think about the number of marriages that where maybe the husband and wife, when it started off, she just flat out, I'm not interested. But he pursued. Well, now nobody wants to go past the one, I'm not interested, because of the litigious society we're living in, the Me Too. All of a sudden you've gone from somebody who's just trying to give it a second shot here to a creeper, a stalker. You're trouble.
Right. And that's the whole thing is you've gone from being the funny guy. You've gone from being the guy that is sort of this harmless friend to being, you used to be a stuffed animal for her to hug and hold, and then suddenly you decide that you want to go further than that. And I think that's another that's sort of a disservice that women do to men, is they say, well, they'll say this, they'll say, oh, so you weren't really my friend after all. They'll play that game, or, oh, you're just being nice because you want to get in my pants. They know the answer. They know that that's BS, but they will still ask that, because what that is it's trying to reposition that guy back into that state of friendship again. Because even if, here's the thing, is when a woman has to give a rejection to a guy, she still likes the attention that she's getting from him. But by rejecting him, she is cutting herself off from that male attention. And so that's why let's just be friends is women's sort of reflexive go-to answer to these guys, because they don't want to lose that.
And it also leaves a door open for them so they can revisit it down the road if their situation changes. If all of a sudden they hit the epiphany phase, and 5 years ago they weren't really interested in you, but now because you were friends, she can revisit it. So it's a double standard. She's keeping all of her options open and at the same time trying to let you down gently.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to get into. Okay, so
Okay.
last week I told you about a buddy of mine who just got T-boned. 6 months. He was cloud nine. He's engaged to this girl, going to get married. Everything moving forward. Catches her in bed with either one of his friends or his best friend. She rips off half of his stuff, cleans out his bank account, all that kind of stuff. He goes, and I said this with you last week. He says, everything I believed is a lie. Everything I believed is a lie. So what are the tools you give a guy to overcome that moving forward? How does he get over that? Because you know what? It's a death. It's a death of a relationship, and it's a betrayal, a death plus a betrayal, and he's got to go through the stages of grief.
That gets me to Davey Furtado's question here, and I want to throw this out there. Also, thank you for the super chats, brother.
Is that Nelly's brother?
Yeah, no, Nelly Furtado. Yeah. So he says, the more years you pass as an incel, the harder it is to revert from that situation. How do you break that cycle? That's the kind of what you're talking about there. Then one other thing that he also brought up. This is also Dave. He says incels have no friends, social circle, and they have been that way since kids. What can they do to revert this situation? And how can you go from zero options for 25 plus years to having options? Well, my first inclination is to tell you that you've got to look at things realistically. First of all, you've got to be able to unplug from that. It sounds like I'm just going to presume that Davey is one of these guys. Okay. You have, and even whether you are or you're not, you have to pull yourself out you have to look at yourself, I think, in a third person. And that's really tough for guys to do, because after 25 years of being ego invested in the feelings that go along with that rejection, that's the hardest part to do. But I think the opening stages of it is you have to be aware of the game. You have to understand, you have to find some way to insulate yourself, insulate your ego, I should say, from that rejection. Protect your ego. First of all, this is where I part ways with guys like Mark Manson and the rest of these dudes who say that, vulnerability is your strength. Yeah, well, it is until rejection. Vulnerability is weakness. Let's just say by definition, it's weakness. But telling guys to just wear their heart on their sleeves and just put themselves out there, and eventually some woman will take pity on them and have sex with them and husband them up, I guess. That's okay. So first part is this. I think most of these guys tend to be more isolated. And I have I put the description, or the link to this post in the description. It's called The Isolationists, is an essay that I wrote. Okay. And isolation, this is a law of power. Isolation is dangerous. So if you are separating yourself, you're cutting yourself off from social situations, if you're cutting yourself off from that the information that you need to give you better, learning experiences for yourself, if all you're ever doing is staying in the same forums, if you're only talking to incels, if you've isolated yourself intellectually, I guess, on online forums, if you're using buffers, if all you're ever doing is dealing with people behind a screen, get out and learn how to deal with people on a face-to-face basis. That's the hardest part, because a lot of these guys are just, it's almost, I don't want to say they're not socially retarded, but they're socially stunted.
They're developmentally stunted. Let me give you an example. We got a friend who's got a son who has Asperger's, okay? And he's very socially awkward, and he was isolated, pretty much staying in the room on his computer, PC, playing video games, whatever. Intellectually smart in school, he's doing okay, right? What she did, she actually put him in. You ever hear of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, Influence People?
Yes.
She actually enrolled him in a class of that to study it, okay? But also to interact with other people in the class, because you got to get out. You're never going to get better if you're in your room by yourself.
I'll give you a quick tip. One of the things that I think is one of the most underestimated sort of techniques that guys can use to become more sociable is to get into an improvisational acting class. because you're forced to think of things right there on the spot.
Mhm.
I've seen guys who are like petrified to talk to people in a social situation, but you put them in an improv class and they're forced to think of things on the spot, and it helps them develop a sense of how to do it in real life. And I've had people tell me that after taking these classes that they become more sociable, or they understand, at least they understand how to make those reads, because it's almost like practicing. It's like practicing that social engagement and having something to say. A lot of guys will tell me that they're not good conversationalists. They don't know what to say on a date. Like they'll get to a point where they get to the date, but they don't know what to say when they're on. They can't carry a conversation,
or they talk too much.
Or they talk too much. Yeah. Or they overshare. Remember, oh, we got to be vulnerable. So I'll tell you my life story at the dinner table. No, don't do that. But there's one of the reasons why they call pickup artistry is because there's an art to it. There is knowing what to use and knowing what to say and when. And I think that when guys get into pickup artistry, it's an act to them, and it probably should be in the beginning, but it should be teaching you how to engage socially. So when I see guys who have been isolated for 20, like Davey was saying, for 25 some odd years, like where do they go from that? Because you get, after a while, and he's right about this, is you get stuck into this negative feedback loop, and then that becomes a black pill, and then that becomes, so, and then I'm looking at here, LG's got this, thanks for the $10. He says, become the best version of yourself, mental point of origin, and you will make it harder for them to reject you. Yes, I think that's the key. And that's one of the things where that's one point where I will always agree with MGTOW, is you should not be living your life for women. Women should only ever be a complement to your life and never the focus of it. And so what happens is when you are constantly and persistently, investing your ego into that process, into the process of getting with a girl, first of all, you haven't made it to the point where you can build yourself up enough to be seen as sort of like higher up on the dominance hierarchy there.
Why? I've used this with my own sons. Why would she want to date you?
Right. And that's what he says here. Also remember, women want to be with men who other women want to have sex with.
When people ask me, about guests I bring on the program, why do I bring Rollo Tomasi on the program? Because he adds value. He's got unique, compelling content I can't get anywhere else. Be that guy that women want to be with. Have that unique, compelling content they can't get anywhere else.
Yeah. This is good. Sam Whiskey says you get rejected in straight commission sales too. Yes, you do. So
one of the there's a guy here in town that got his start in telemarketing, and he trains telemarketers all around the world, right? But the guy he perfected, the 10,000 hour rule, Malcolm Gladwell. He perfected his trade online, call after call after call after call. He went through so many rejections, but he finally developed the tools, the skills necessary to get that sale. And now he's so good, he's training other people.
Yeah. And I'm looking here in the chat as well. And one of the guys here is saying incels are losers because their only goal is to get women. I think that is, at least in part way, part of their problem is believing or investing enough of their own ego in that process, in the goal state. And I think what happens is, even if you, like guys who are used to rejection, they don't have any plan for success, so that they end up shooting themselves in the foot, even if the girl says yes. If the girl says, yeah, hey, let's go out on a date. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? They can't believe that they got to a point where and that's where they drop the ball, right? Because they don't know what to do with success. And so there's a confidence side of things. I think that we always tell guys, go get in the gym, get yourself together. If you're trying to rebuild yourself or make yourself into something else, I think half of that is believing that you can do it. Half of that is understanding that personality is not static. You don't have to be the person you were yesterday if you choose not to be.
You can change. You
can change. And that's the other thing, is a belief that you can change. And so how do you want to do it?
When my son went through boot camp with the Marine Corps, my son wasn't a bad kid, but it was amazing how they took 529, males, all about age 18, give or take. And within 13 weeks, they literally transformed them, changed their lives around. They all looked and acted a particular way, very different from what they did when they went in. You know, so I mean, people that say, "Oh, I can't change," or "I'm too old," or this or that. You get the right program. You get the right program. You get the proper coaching. You can do anything you want. Anything you can set your mind on.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not here to sell you coaching or anything like that, but that's absolutely true. Finding a mentor, finding somebody who actually cares enough to like say, "Hey, dude," or to, I think that a lot of guys who fall on that sort of, I don't say Asperger's, but they fall on that autism kind of scale. They don't know. They have not had the occasion to learn social interface, because the only way that they talk to people is through a chat room or through, online all the time. And they don't have the occasion to read body language. They don't have the occasion to, that's why I tell guys is to get away from the buffers. People want to tell me how like tight their text game is. Like, well, that's great, but what do you talk about when you're face to face? Anytime you are, you're texting a woman should be used to get that woman either excited about seeing you or setting up the meeting to see you, because you will be at your strongest when you are right there in front of her face.
And how, the other thing is, I think I told you this before, I went to a Brian Tracy seminar years ago, maybe a couple hundred people there, maybe a couple thousand. But he goes, "How many of you are in sales?" A couple hands went up sheepishly. And he goes, "You're all in. We're selling from the minute you get up to the minute you go to bed. You are selling yourself to the rest of the world." And what we're talking about right here is selling yourself to the opposite sex. Why in the name of Sam Hill would a chick want to date you? What do you offer? What do you bring to the game?
Yeah, exactly. What's your value?
Well, guess
what's
what?
Your value added?
Right?
Yeah. So I'm a note taker. So I think you also have to remember that the whole process when you are trying to make those approaches, I think women are either probably subconsciously or in their hindbrain, they're more aware of the situation you're going through than men necessarily want to give them. Like when a woman is getting attention from a guy that she knows she's going to have to reject later, she knows that before you know that, because she can read that, the sub communications and everything else. Like when a guy becomes a puppy dog, when the guy follows her around, when the guy is trying to do things, like he becomes serviceable to her and do her chores or dig her out of the snow or something like that. When a guy is doing that, you're not being slick. You're telegraphing your interest. That's one thing I think. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to have a successful approach in this particular episode here, but understanding that when you are planning that, you can't be as transparent as you probably already are, because women can read the sub communications of you. Like if you're, like I said, if you're a hanger on, if you're an orbiter, a woman's hindbrain already knows. Even if she doesn't acknowledge it to you, her hindbrain knows that you're an orbiter. Her hindbrain. What's the saying? The saying is that women know within the first 5 minutes of meeting you if they're going to have sex with you or not. And that's the old 80s adage from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Like she knows within the first 5 minutes if she's going to have sex with you. I would say this. I would say women know that they know that they're not going to have sex with you within the first 5 minutes. It's not so much like whether they will or they won't. It's if you don't qualify within that first 5 minutes, then they see, they categorize you. And have you heard of ladder theory? Did we ever talk about ladder? Ladder? Yeah. And this is a very old, I don't say pickup artist, but this is a very old PUA theory, which is that women have 2 ladders. And if you are on her friend's ladder, you can only get up so high on that ladder. But if you're in the boyfriend ladder or the intimate ladder, you can go up to be, at the very top of your boyfriend, right? Having sex. Guys, women will decide what ladder you're going to be on after meeting you for the first time. So if you're in the friends ladder, you're going to be stuck on the friends ladder until what happens, guys call it this, a ladder shift. They're like, guys try to jump from the friend ladder over onto the boyfriend ladder. And that what happens is when they fail that, they go down to the bottom of the ladder again, and they have to work themselves back up again. And that's the idea of, I think that defines blue pill understanding or beta game, is that if they can build themselves up and build up their esteem on one ladder, that they'll finally get to to becoming her boyfriend. I mean, but again, all of this is based on one thing, that she is the ultimate goal. You're living your life, or you're basing your own estimation on your value. Your value is related to whether or not she accepts you or she doesn't. And I think that's the first thing that guys who are incels need to learn, is that you have to break the cycle of believing that her esteem of you is what makes you.
That idea is so foreign to me, and of course I'm a little bit different than everybody else. I have never relied on, I don't need other people's affirmation. I don't need somebody there cheering me on. Oh, you can do this, Pat, I know you can, kind of stuff, or telling me. In fact, I had a lot of problems probably well into my early adulthood with even accepting compliments, because I always thought there was something behind it. I had to sort of train myself to finally say thank you for the kind words and move along. But I don't need other people's approval. Now, the fact that these guys, if what you're telling me is correct, the incels, they need this woman's approval. That's part of the problem right there. You shouldn't even be out there soliciting women at this point, because you need to work on yourself. You're not there. You've got to improve yourself. You got to make yourself somebody that women want and desire. And unless you're there, you shouldn't even be on the market.
And then the hardest part of that is that you need to be doing that for yourself, not with women as the goal. And again, when you're 25 years into this, that's a real tall order, because this is stuff that your dad should have taught you. This is the stuff that your male mentors should have taught you.
But the dads aren't there. The dads aren't there. The male mentorship isn't there. You used to have, things like big brothers, for people that came from a fatherless home kind of stuff. I don't even know if that's still around or not.
Yeah. I was going to say, if there is a use for guys, at least in this community, in the manosphere, I think that if you're going to call yourself a coach and you want to help other guys out, be that mentor. Be the guy that's going to be the one that's going to say, look, who's going to, and again, if you're this incel and you want to change your life, be open to criticism, be open. It's not an attack on you. It's just, we're showing you have to have the thick skin to take criticism, so that you can take correction, so that you can work on yourself. Most guys can't do that, because they can't, again, relating to other men. Like we were saying before, these guys don't relate to other men. And any kind of correction, any kind of ribbing, any kind of messing with that person is indistinguishable from bullying. And so that's the hardest part, I think. If this is you, if you're this guy who's been doing this for, you've been rejected for 25 years, step back. Say, you know what, I'm going to rebuild. I'm going to be, here's a really great, I would say this, go and read the book Mastery by Robert Greene. And what he says in the very beginning of Mastery is, if you want to master anything, whether it's we want to get good with women, maybe you want to get good playing guitar, maybe you want to be whatever it is that you want to do, you have to bust yourself down and become the student, and understand that your failures as a student is part of your learning. Not nobody expects you to be a black belt on the first day of your karate class, but you need to approach this with a student's mind, approach this with a like eyes for new learning. That's why I said you need to pull yourself out and sort of look at yourself in terms of you being like the third person, like you're separated from yourself, so that you can see what it is that you're doing.
You almost need like a third party to give you an accurate assessment of what's going on, what's wrong with you, what you need. And I don't like just saying that incels are losers, because
no.
They are where they are for a number of problems. We were talking off air. A lot of these guys are somewhere on the spectrum, and they're never going to be you. They're never going to be me. We met some of them at the 21 convention. They came up, how do I do this or that? I can tell you what the ground rules are. I can tell you what's worked for me, but the reality is you're at a disadvantage because of a number of things, and especially in this day and age with the social media and all of these, what do you call them, the walls, the buffers, whether it's text messages or various dating sites, things like that. You don't have that contact. You need to have that one-on-one experience with people.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm glad Tony brought this up. Tony DeLama, thank you for the super chat.
Tony DeLama, huh? DeLama.
All right. So he says, but the SMP, sexual marketplace, is a marketplace, and hence driven by supply and demand, which determines sexual market value. If there's not much demand for you, how do you not believe that the market is right and I'm not? Well, here's the thing: is I think that when I see guys throwing this stuff out there, like when I read this, here's how I interpret it: that women's egos are overblown today. Now, if you've read my essay, which is about
their sense of self-worth is overinflated because
is overinflated. And if you've read the what I call the global sexual marketplace, women's sense of self, women's sense of value is overinflated because we have the internet, because it's no longer based in a local sexual marketplace. It's the global sexual marketplace. I was looking earlier in a chat here where guys are going, well, Asian men are doomed, or Indian men are doomed. They'll never get. And I when I see that, and I've talked about this before, actually in that post about the global sexual marketplace, there are going to be guys that are going to have a tougher row to hoe than other guys because of that global sexual marketplace.
But it's not.
It's not insurmountable, and I can point to examples like my good friend Larry Chang, who is an Asian man who does very well with women, and it does very well with even white women. So if you want to say it's an ethnic thing, or you want to say it's a socioeconomic thing, those are factors that used to be important in a localized sexual marketplace. In a globalized sexual marketplace, it's the Wild West right now. So are you doomed if you're a 5'4" Filipino guy? Well, I think what you really need to do is adjust for the market. If we're going to talk about this being the market, you need to adjust for that market. What are you looking for? Are you looking for a girl who is, 6'1" and boobs out to here and, blonde and looks like a porn star? I mean, is that what you're after, or are you after something a little bit different than that? I'm not going to say that there aren't barriers to entry with certain women. So what we're getting with this question, we're getting a little bit, more particular, more focused on, well, what is it that you're looking after? So women tend to have more overblown egos, but also this is women's prerequisites tend to fall apart when they are faced with a guy who at least checks off a few of those boxes. So you'll hear, like, if you go and you look at women's dating profiles, if you go look on, exactly.
Well, this is a hostage list. This is exactly the requirements to get me.
Now, from all of those requirements that women want to throw out there on a dating profile, how many of those do you think the guy that ends up her boyfriend actually has? Is he going to end up being the ideal guy for her? First of all, most guys can't possibly meet every single bit of criteria. And the other thing is sometimes the women aren't worth the guys who would have that criteria in the first place.
I like the one in your first book, The Rational Male, you did a spoof on some of these women's dating profile things.
I just flipped it.
But the one, I'm a princess and I demand to be treated as such, and all of these, you got to love my kids as much as I do. And they're always going to come first. It's like, why would I even want to date you?
Right.
I'm just looking at the stuff here and it's like, and then when you did it and turned it around on yourself and made I'm a prince. Look at everybody goes nuts. They go ape shit on you.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say that Tony DeLama is wrong here. I'm just saying that it's probably not as overblown, I think, that a lot of guys make it as. Like, it's one thing to go on Twitter and to see, or go on Tinder, or go on any kind of social media and look at, first of all, the way that women think of themselves, their entitled sense of self-worth. Remember, we talk about this all the time. If a woman goes on Instagram and she's a 6, suddenly she's an 8, and therefore she believes she deserves a 9. That is, I think eventually the market corrects itself, because after a while women will say, we're all the nice guys. How come I'm 36 and I don't have a husband? How come, then of course they want to blame it on men, but it's becoming increasingly more common for women to be more alone. I was reading was it Forbes or was Time was saying, like, in the next decade, I think by 2026, something like 70% of women will be still be single.
Ooh.
Like for single for their whole life. And it was, it was in Forbes because they were trying to, they were going to call it the she economy, right? Because those women are going to be the ones that are going to be economic drivers in the future.
How many years?
Because they're single, like within the next like 6 years, I think. Oh, well, no, if you're, well, first of all, if you're not married by 35 or 36, statistically, you're not going to get married as a woman. And so there's, as a marketplace, yeah, he's right. But I think that when you meet someone and when you're face to face with someone, that's why I keep encouraging guys to learn game and to be, in real time rather than behind a screen when they're interrelating with women, because you think that you'll find, like, guys will say this, well, how come I can go on Tinder? I can't go on Tinder. It's a losing game. If I go on Tinder, I'm going to get swiped left. And they're only going for the top, not even 20%. They're going for the top 5% of guys that get that response rate. I'm going to go, yeah, because you're on Tinder, because that's your arena. That's where you're basing your research on, is from this one. Now, what happens when you get into like social circle game? What happens when you go and like, maybe you go to clubs, maybe you do day game, maybe you have a circle of friends at college, maybe you have, develop a social circle. This was what I was going to say about Davey Furtado's question here is, I think that a lot of incels, they get locked into their only socialization is with other incels. It's commiserating with other incels. Develop a social circle, a real life face-to-face where you're hanging out with your friends, social circle. And if you don't have one, develop one. If you have one that's a dead end, develop another one.
You are the sum total of the 5 people that are closest to you, to hang around with you. If you have losers hanging around with you, you are always going to be a loser. You will never rise above that. You need to find people. You need to get into a social circle where everybody, it's like a gym. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go into a gym where I'm the biggest, strongest guy. Okay, because that would be called Planet Fitness. I don't want to go there, right? So I want to go to a place where there's guys bigger, stronger, faster than me. Why? Because that's gonna encourage me to excel, to get better. I'm going to learn something from those people rather than just wallow in mediocrity.
Become the student. That's why I'm Go Read Mastery by Robert Greene. Fantastic. I would like to, if I didn't think I would be stepping on copyright infringement, I would love to do something where I could take the lessons in Mastery and convert them, or at least cater them to guys in Red Pill community, or guys who are asking these same questions. Because we ought to do the 48 laws of the manosphere, 48 laws. And see how they relate. Let
me just, because I have thought came into my head here. Here is what guys, I don't care if you're an incel, MGTOW, whatever, okay, and you want to approach women. Of course, MGTOWs wouldn't. But you want to approach them. And this is something I've learned from talk radio. I did not understand the importance of it early on. Okay. It took me a while to get there. The best talk show hosts in the world, or interviewers in the world, are great storytellers. The way you get to a woman is with your story. If you've got a great, compelling story, that is going to suck her in. You get into the woman through her head. Once you're in the head, you can have anything you want, okay? But the story is what's going to sell you. It's just like me on the radio. A story, a compelling story, sells me on the radio. It's going to be the same way in a dating relationship. In fact, it works for women, too. I can think of a number of people, a number of women over the years that have a really great story. It might have, got me more interested in them than looks or anything else, because they had a compelling story. And it's one of these deals where I want to know more. You need to be that guy. I want to know more. I want to see more. I want to find out more about you.
Become a student. You need to become a student of life, really, is what you need to do. Now, I want to relate this back to what we were talking about, where guys have a real tough time relating with other guys. First of all, because we have at least the last 2 generations of people have been living behind a screen, and they feel uncomfortable going into a gym, right? They feel uncomfortable relating to men as men conventionally, masculinely relate to one another. I'm going to give you a really quick story here. And I've said this before, I've written at least a couple of posts on how tribes develop. Human beings are naturally tribalistic. And sorry, Jordan Peterson, if you want to go off about individualism, but I firmly believe that human beings evolved to be tribal, and our basic tribe unit, of course, is our family. We want to, we have principles like kin affiliation and stuff like that. And then that extends into broader family, like, extended families, into tribes, into nations, right? Well, what I see is this, is that I think that because we live in a more atomized society right now, we sort of we develop these sub-tribes. And so for me, my sub-tribes, well, my biggest tribe, of course, is a manosphere. But like if I'm working, the people that I work with, the people that I hire on as a regular basis for my crew, if I'm going to do a promo, that's one of my tribes. If I go to the gym, I've got friends at the gym. Those are my wife is like amazed at how quickly I can make friends. But what I'm really doing is I'm sort of inserting myself into other tribes. So we just moved, right? We moved from one location in Nevada to another location. I'm at a new gym right now. I'm already talking to like 2 other guys who are, I don't know if they'll be, gym partners or something like that, but I'm talking because we share a common interest. I think it's easier for guys because if you share a common interest, because remember what I've always said is that women talk and men do. So if you're an incel, or if you're trying to learn, you're trying to get a little bit up on the social intelligence, you want to catch up, you want to become that student, understand that men do things. So find a common interest and I don't mean like anime, and I don't mean, whatever. I mean, going out and doing something. Are you a fisherman? Are you do you like to go to the gym? Real quickly, I'm because now that I moved to this new location, I'm not playing in a band, but I'm just sort of jamming with these guys that might eventually become a band that I'm playing with right now. And I can go into to a situation, I can go into a rehearsal space, and because I do what these guys do, we have a shared common interest that becomes a sub tribe for me, because I'm a musician. So that's one of my sub tribes, is to be involved in. And so what I'm saying is that if you don't have those sub tribes, find ways to create those tribes, because that will help you. One of the things that women always have that men tend to lack is that social network. So when a woman is rejected, or a woman is going through a tough time, she's got like 10 girlfriends that she can call, who are going to pat her on the back, and they're going to go eat Ben and Jerry's and watch rom-coms or something like that. They're going to have that fallback. And this is even the mainstream will tell you this, is men don't have those friends. They don't have that network. And this is why they blame suicides and stuff like that, is because they don't, guys don't have anybody to talk to. Well, they're saying that because they think men should relate like women, but in a sense they're right, because men don't develop the same kind of social networks that women do, or they don't have it naturally.
Something I learned years ago, in fact, teenage years, I had a mentor, a good friend of mine, Joe Walker. He's about 17 years older than me, but he said something very profound, has stuck with me ever since. No man is an island. No man is an island. I had been going through a particularly tough situation at the time, and what he's talking about is, guys, we don't have 10 girlfriends to pick up the phone and call to bounce off of. You might have 1, 2, maybe 3 close friends. What you need is a confidant. You need a real friend, somebody that can also mentor you too, but somebody that you have complete trust in. And people like that, especially in this day and age, are very, very hard to find.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, like, when I set out to write a book, or when I wasn't even planning on writing a book, it's really an aggregate of the conversations that I was having back in the day. But when I started involving myself in these conversations in online forums and stuff, I wanted to do something that was going to keep the noose off of guys' necks, right? I wanted to do something that was going to like help other men. Right. And I'm glad to say that I can still do that right now, but a lot of guys won't do that. A lot of guys, because for men, it's all about them and it's their success. And so when you are looking for a mentor, look for somebody who's not like using you as a grift, but also that actually is invested in your own success. That's why family members are really good for stuff like this, if you have the family members to do so.
I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to Jaron Jackson on my program. I bring him on every Wednesday. He's a vet. I think he's 34. He did 2 tours of duty over in Afghanistan. Super smart guy, West Point graduate. And he's very grateful for the opportunity for me bringing him on the program, and he wants to pay me back somehow. I said, dude, I see the gifts you have. You've got game, serious game. You're going to go places. And when he comes on the program, I told him, you're coming to the gym. You're coming to the talk radio gym. with me. The guy's phenomenal. Never has any notes. Everything's off the top of his head. He's got a mad skill set that I rarely have ever seen in a 34-year-old. And he's going to go places. He's going to do things. Originally, he thought he was going to go into politics. I said, "You're selling yourself short." I said, "Think bigger, think bigger." But somebody like that, what I'm doing with him, right? And we've also, in fact, we got a mutual friend, I think, that was involved. We saw him at the Patriarch convention. Was involved in a terrible car accident, lost his wife. His whole life turned upside down. I told him privately. I said, "Dude," I said, "if you get in a dark place," I said, "you got my cell. Call me." And I mean it. Call me, because there's so many guys out there that I don't have anyone. Everything's been ripped away from me, and all they need is somebody to talk to.
Somebody to
listen. Somebody to listen.
Sometimes all it takes is a guy to tell you, "Have you thought about it this way?" Like when guys come to me and they say, "Thank you for saving my life. I was going to kill myself. I did," and really, the catalyst for that changes the direction of their life is thinking about something in a different way. Right. Like, I never thought about that. Or they'll tell me this. They'll say, "I've always known that, but I've never been able to put it into words. I've never been able to articulate what it is that you're saying right here." And that changed the course of my life. And sometimes that's all it really takes. When you're dealing with rejection, you want to have somebody to talk about it with. Right. But understand that, especially if you're talking about a guy, guys aren't going to be there, and they're not going to. I wouldn't expect guys to go there and give you a hug and say, "It's okay, old man. Don't worry." That I would expect. And if the guy's a good mentor, he's going to go, "Okay, yeah, I get what you're talking about, but here, think about what you did. Why did this work? Why did this not work?" The word, when I talk to guys who are unsuccessful in the sexual marketplace, it's real easy for me, because I can go, "Okay, look what you did here. Do you think you could change that the next time? Do you think, why did this work and why did this not work? And why are you rejected instead of actually successful?" That's easy to do. It's when guys are actually successful that it scares me. Because they go, "Oh, hey, I did what you said, Rollo, and it worked great. Thanks a lot, man. I'll see you later. Bye." And it's like, no, you need to analyze your success just as well as you need to analyze your failures, because eventually, just because you got into a state of intimacy with a woman does not necessarily mean you're going to have some magical ability to live with that person. Or why did you do that in the first place? Now that you're successful, are you in a better position because you were successful, or are you in a worse position because you're successful and you don't know what to do from here? Those are things to think about.
So I want to get to. Did you have another question you wanted to get to?
No. I didn't. I think I pretty much went
sort of the theme for today's show. Which is dealing with rejection. Rejection is better than regret. When you're in the eye of the hurricane, the storm. Okay, it's easy for us guys to say this. Dealing with rejection. I want to talk about tools. Because we started touching on this last week. Like my buddy who just got dumped, got totally T-boned. His life's been turned upside down. What do you do? We talked about things not to do. Don't drink. Don't do drugs, whether they're prescription or off the black market drugs. Try to keep your head clear. We talked about exercising. But if it's a relationship, let's say it's a relationship where you've invested some time and with no kids, you have to mentally erase that individual. I know it's
indifference. You have to learn indifference.
All the pictures, you can't dwell on her. You got to get rid of the pictures, the text messages, the emails. On social media, you can't be creeping on her Instagram page. Going, "Oh, geez," second guessing yourself, doubting yourself. You have to you got to cut the cord. You have to make the break, and you've got to move on.
Yeah, a lot of guys are going to say this in the chat room: is go ghost on her. You have to go. You have to completely disappear.
You're not doing it for her, though. You're doing it to save yourself.
To save yourself. Yeah, there's a practicality to it. So yeah, and again, there's no easy answers for this, because everybody faces rejection on their own, and there's commonalities, but they're still dealing with this based on their own personalities. So
if it's a marriage and you're getting divorced and you got kids, it's not that easy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to have to see her again. You're going to have to deal with her again, but you can in your head, you can cut that cord.
Yeah. And that's, I think, is the hardest part, because what we were saying before is that guys invest themselves in the process. They invest themselves in, like, if I do all these things, then I'll go from being unhappy and lonely to being happy and paired up with this girl of my dreams, right? And you get invested in that. And when that doesn't happen, again, it's a blow to your ego. And those are the guys that have real trouble becoming indifferent. You have to learn indifference. You have to find a way to go ghost, to say, you know what, okay, it didn't work out. I'm done. I'm moving on to the next prospect. One of the reasons why I tell guys not to, like in Iron Rule of Tomasi #7, never root through garbage once it's been dragged to the curb. And what I found, the reason that was a rule is because I had so many guys asking me, how do I get my girlfriend back? That's one aspect of it. The other one is I invested all this time and energy in trying to get with a girl, did everything the pickup artists told me. I did everything that Oprah told me and all my life coaches told me, and it still didn't work. How come how can I be happy? I can't get this girl. Well, your happiness is invested in that process. So that's why you're having trouble becoming indifferent to it. You have to pull yourself out of that process and not be invested in the, people will call this outcome independence. And I don't think that anybody can be truly outcome independent, but I think that there are levels of not caring enough so that you can still move on. So when I say don't root through garbage after you drag to the curb, that also means if the girl rejects you, then you don't go back and try to find some other way to get in there. You move on. And guys will say, well, what about persistence, man? I'm with my wife because I was persistent. Well, would you rather be with a hell yes girl who was ready to go from the beginning because she really had 100% genuine desire for you? Or would you rather be with the woman you had to talk into bed? This is one of the points of separation I have with pickup artists. I don't believe in the last minute resistance stuff. If a chick's not that, if she's giving you any kind of resistance, and I don't mean like, oh, get off of me, you creep. I mean like she's kind of vacillating between being into you and not into you. Back up off of it, because the interest level and the genuine desire is not at 100%. You need a woman who is at 100%. And guys will think, okay, I didn't get in there this time. Maybe if I did these things, I can get that interest level up to 80% and she'll be into me. And then I can literally prove to her what I'm worth, because now we're in some sort of intimate, arrangement now, or we have a relationship.
It's like that story we had last
like
week.
More.
The NBA player who was acquitted on rape charges. They've got video footage of the girl running out of the hotel room twice and being physically dragged back in. And somehow the people in the jury felt that was consensual. In what world? Dude does not want to be with you, but part of that don't you get?
Yeah. And it's, like I said, I'm not a proponent for trying to defeat last minute resistance. If there is resistance there at all, first of all, you can call that rape or harassment or whatever. You're setting yourself up for something in there. I don't know what it's going to be, but the other thing is, why would you want to be with somebody who is not 100% into you? Yeah. And
it's like we were talking about with the starfish sex. I mean, the biggest turnoff in the whole wide world to me personally as a guy would be, go ahead, get it over with. Really? Really? Okay, I'll get the attorney on the phone because we're going to divorce court. That to me is a total rejection of you. Yeah. If you don't want me, just tell me. Just don't. I'm not going to go through it just for whatever you call it, duty sex or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That to me is like one of the most insulting things a chick could do.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to supers? Do we have anything else we wanted to cover?
You got super in there. I'm going to let you handle, champ. It's all yours.
Which one? Good evening, Rollo. Thank you so much for your books and your work. I have all
Stefan Collins.
Stefan Collins. Oh, okay. He gave me 100 SEK. I have no idea what this is. I'm feeling rejected. Stefan says, I'm feeling rejected from a girlfriend because she no longer wants to do anal. We have done it. We've done it for 1 year and have been to watch how I get out of this one. We have done it for 1 year, been together for a year and a half. She says she feels anxiety from it now. All else is good. Any advice?
Here's my advice. First of all, it might be because your first name's Stefan. Go ahead. Your turn. I couldn't let it go.
Here's okay. When I talk about anal sex, I talk about that in terms of not like the actual physical act of having it, but that act being the ultimate act of submission. That act is the most that a woman can go. Okay. Now, if but don't think of it in terms of anal sex. Think of it in terms of the act that is the ultimate that a woman what can a woman give to you? What can a woman do for you that shows her 100% just absolute lust and love and genuine desire for you? What does that look like? If it's not anal sex, if you're not into that, maybe it's a blowjob. Maybe, but like there are guys that I counsel who are in these sexless marriages. And if they got a blowjob on their birthday, that's the ultimate thing. Like that's their form of anal sex. Right. So don't think of it in terms, because where I'm going to go with this after this, you gotta track with me here.
By the way, I just want to let my listeners in Tulsa know I can't get ready.
I don't relate to this.
It was dead on my head. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the deal: is let's just say let's replace the term anal sex with the act that is the ultimate act. Okay. Well, what happens is when a woman is into it and she's really gives it to you, she wants to go against the strong independent woman narrative, which is I want to do something for the express pleasure of this guy. What's the ultimate act? There it is. So when she pulls that away, when she takes that away, what you see is, or what your hindbrain thinks is there is a loss of interest. Now, like, whereas before she was really into me and she wanted to do anything I wanted to do, now that one thing is off the table. Is she still as into me as she was? And the answer is probably no. There's probably something that's changed in your relationship, whether it's the newness of it. Maybe like, we talk about the honeymoon period, like the first 3 months that you're with a girl is when you're going to have the most wild, crazy monkey sex. And then after that, it's good sex. Maybe you moved in together like an idiot, and now it's comfort. Now it's now it's Netflix and chill instead of tear my clothes off. I want you to take me like an animal kind of thing. So there is probably what's happened in this is that you've gone past the 3 months expiration date or whatever. Well, he said we've done it for a year. Okay. So they've been doing it for a year. That was the ultimate thing. And now she's taking it away. When I talk about the iron rule of Tomasi number 3, when a woman makes you wait for sex, or by her actions implies that she's making you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait. That is about genuine desire. What will she do to prove that she has genuine desire for you? She doesn't have to prove. What does she want to do because she feels that genuine desire for you? So there's something that's happened in your relationship where she doesn't want to do that anymore, where it's not about the ultimate act anymore. It's about some dynamic in the relationship has changed. And I don't know what that is.
How about this? How about this angle? Maybe she did it just to appease you, to show
you in. Yeah. The free samples.
Like it, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Those are the free samples.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is if it was well, it is. It's the loss leader. That's what Tom Likas calls it. Is the loss leader. Is when I'll make this comparison. What happens is you get women who are really hot to have sex with you. Maybe they were in their proliferative phase in their ovulatory cycle, and they really want to get with you, and they're having sex with you, and it's fantastic, and they love it. And then they cut it off. They go, you know what? I don't think we're doing this the right way. I want to get right with God, and I'm not going to have sex with you until you put a ring on it. And so now what that woman has done,
put a ring on
it? Yeah, exactly. Well, now what that woman has done is she's just said, hey, sex to me is a tool. Sex to me is something that it's a loss leader. Get them in the door, get them hooked, and then take it away and say, if you want to keep up with, you want the service, you got to pay the monthly, rental fee. You have to pay the subscription fee. And usually that means marry me, or that means if you want to keep having sex, I had sex with you, this is what you're going to get. Okay. We're not doing it anymore until you have more of an investment.
I think that, and I might give myself trouble here with this, but I think that's actually the way most women feel, that sex is that tool.
Transactional
relationship. And that sex is not going to be infinite like you think it is. Oh, great, I'm going to be married, and 20, 25 years down the road, we're going to be knocking it out of the park 3-4 nights a week. Mm-hmm. Well, that might be the deal you signed up for, but maybe that wasn't what she had in mind at the time.
Right, because it's bait and switch. right? It's this is the crazy monkey sex you're
I
going
don't
to
even
get.
know that it's bait and switch, because we're getting back to the other thing where we're not equally yoked. A guy's sex drive is in no way comparable to a woman's, especially once they start getting towards menopause. Unless you're doing hormone replacement therapy, there's not a whole lot of 50-year-old women out there that want to have sex 3-4 times a week.
Okay, I'm going to answer. Yes, I do. And I'm going to answer that question. Let me respond to that, but I'm going to answer that with this. Is Johnny says there, and I get this all the time. This is one more misconception I think with hypergamy. It's that there's so much options out there. She'll never feel content with her choice. Never ever. Nice theory in the old days, sure valid, but today it's outdated. Unfortunately, here's the thing. This is a sign of believing that hypergamy is a straitjacket. That if a woman is if that hypergamous doubt isn't matched all the time, or if you're not the best that she can do all the time, that she's going to automatically go off and find the next guy. Okay, that is based on a woman's capacity to actually do that. So if you've got a woman who, she's a 7, she thinks she's an 8, and she thinks she deserves an 8 or a 9, the real world is going to, like I said, the market will correct itself. The real world is going to buffer that for that woman. Can she get with a guy? Yeah, maybe she can, but she can't establish a relationship with that guy. So is that always the case? No, it's not always the case, because women can't always optimize hypergamy. That's why she's not going to go with that other guy, because if, like, when I quote Marty Hazelton about the ovulatory shift research that she has done,
right.
There are two factors. One is that when a woman is in a proliferative phase, one of the things they found is that she seeks to have sex with alpha guys outside of the relationship if she is in a relationship that is not satisfying to her, meaning if she's with a guy that she doesn't, isn't measuring up to what she thinks she can get. If that woman is in a relationship with a guy who she finds satisfactory, that guy during that time of the month is going to get more sex and hotter sex at that point, because that's the guy she wants to be with. So what it comes down to is it's not this automatic thing where, why get with a woman at all, because she's always going to be looking for the bigger and the better deal. Well, not all women can optimize that and make that happen. Furthermore, that is women's innate mental firmware, but that doesn't mean that she can't override that firmware. So if a woman is in a marriage, maybe it's the marriage vows, maybe it's the religion, maybe it's her belief set, maybe it's the way that she was raised. Does she still want to? Maybe, but she doesn't act on those things because her software can override the firmware.
So satisfied in another way, 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah. Or she'll find other ways to manifest it. So, what else do we have here? We have.
By the way, you got that? I sent it to you as a DM. That solicitation I got during the OU game last night.
Oh,
the Peaches lady.
Yeah.
This chick, and I'm not going to put it up there for anything. She acts like she's a 10, and probably on her best day is what, a 5 or a 6. With proper lighting. But again, I sent it to you because I'm there like, this is a perfect example of what you talk about, an inflated sense of self-worth that's not based on reality, but based on social media.
Okay, I've got a couple more here. Thanks, Sam Bada is keeping track of the supers for me today.
Love Sam.
I've got another one here from YOLO, again, a regular here. He says, "Hi, Rollo, do you have any advice about how to become less jealous as a guy in a relationship? Any good books or essays? Thank you."
Jealousy is a sign of insecurity.
Well, is it?
I think it is.
Okay.
If you're constantly worried, either that or it's your gut telling you that
your gut tells you something. That's where I'm going to go with this.
I mean, if you're a guy that's constantly, you're checking her cell phone, you're checking her on social media, where are you going, what are you doing, who are you seeing, all that kind of stuff. That's a mate guarding for starters. But I also think it comes with a little bit of, well, maybe I overshot. Maybe I got somebody that's a little bit above me, and I'm worried that somebody else is going to steal her, or something better is going to come along.
A lot of guys will fight me on this, and I agree with you. I think that guys who are who tend to be more suspicious,
Mhm.
guys who tend to be more jealous. And I'm not saying that I haven't done this as well. I think jealousy is a natural thing. It's part of our mental firmware, particularly for, and it becomes more pronounced for men who are lower in SMV. The guys who are who have to put all of their eggs in one reproductive basket. The guys who, like we've talked about the what is it, strategic pluralism theory before. There are guys who are the 20% guys who can go and have unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Those are the guys that aren't going to worry so much about being suspicious or revert to mate guarding, because they have other chicks to mate and they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. This is the theory, okay? And then there's the 80% of guys, which are why we say 80% of guys are beta. These are the guys who invest all of their reproductive efforts in one woman, because they subscribe to a scarcity mentality, but they also realize that if they don't do that, then they probably won't reproduce. They also tend to be more preoccupied with paternity. All men are invested in their own paternity, but guys who don't have as much sexual opportunity as, like, say, the 20% guys, they are going to be more suspect or more susceptible to mate guarding behavior. So there's a difference between feeling jealousy and there's a difference to acting on it. Okay, guys are going to feel jealousy because we want to make sure that our reproductive efforts are in a woman who's going to have our child. That's why when you're jealous of somebody, or you're jealous of the attentions that woman is getting, what that's saying to your hindbrain is that woman is not loyal. She's not going to be loyal to me. So do I really want to invest my reproductive efforts in her if she's having sex with another guy over here and then tells me that it's actually my child? And that's why you become suspicious, because she's out. Why would we be worried about infidelity for any other reason than for mate guarding? We want to make sure, we want assurances that the child that woman has and her desire is for me, and that we're going to be a team, and I'm going to be parentally invested in a child. The only part of that deal is I have to know that kid is mine. So jealousy is a manifestation. It's an adaptation, an evolutionary adaptation that helps guys understand, or helps guys have assurances of the paternity of their own children. So you're going to feel jealousy. There's nothing wrong. How you deal with that is just what Pat's talking about here. Dealing with it and being preoccupied with it all the time will sort of telegraph or broadcast your station as being not one of the 20%, but one of the 80%. So that's why when Pat says, it's a sign of insecurity. The reason it's a sign of insecurity is because no alpha most alphas would not be concerned with that, because they have other options. So what else? Oh, John Nash has one here. It says, can't you reach a point where you can give up and move to Colombia or the Philippines? Well,
I got a friend that's doing just that.
Maybe that's what you need to do. Over there. Okay, when I hear guys tell me about, like, just pick up and move to a country in Southeast Asia, and the sexual marketplace is much more in your favor.
And the women are very different.
The women are very different.
They've not been westernized. They're not feminists. Your money, you're in the Philippines in particular, US dollars, bigger bang for the buck.
Now, and this is what I think too, is I think that in those local sexual marketplaces, if you take a guy who is from the global sexual marketplace and you put him in a local sexual marketplace, so you got a tall white guy in the Philippines and he happens to be 5'11", he's taller than 90% of the men in the Philippines. He's a giant. Okay, so that's one side of it. Here's the other side, is that because of the global sexual marketplace right now, and I'm going to take a note. I'm going to take a page out of Andrew Tate's book here. Andrew Tate will tell you the opposite. He will tell you that the women who are in, like, Romania, or the women who are in Belarus, or the women who are even the women in the Philippines, they have cell phones. They see what the outside global sexual marketplace is like, and they adjust their hypergamous nature, their hypergamous strategy according now to the global sexual marketplace. So what Andrew Tate will tell you is that if you were to go to, say, like Estonia or something like that, the women are already wise to you. They already know. And even Roosh was saying the same thing not too long ago when he wrote Pussy Paradise or something like that. Is he went from Poland. He thought Poland was the greatest place in the world for women because it was so like sexually productive for him and rewarding. He leaves the country for a few years, comes back, and now the dynamic has changed. So I think that that's true in a sense, but it's rapidly changing so that we're going from that local sexual marketplace to a global sexual marketplace, even in these underdeveloped countries.
I do think, though, that there's still, especially in Eastern cultures, where, you know, here in the West, we worship youth. They still have profound respect for age, especially the elderly. But they are more, the society as a whole is less egalitarian here in the West, and it's more of a complementary situation where they understand the role of the man versus the role of the woman.
Yeah, well, you're always going to see that. You're going to see that in like Latin cultures as well. Right. I think that a lot of that is, again, it goes back to the idea of the global sexual marketplace. So if you go to a Latin country and you go to, say, like Brazil, now people will tell you, like in Brazil, you know, the men there's a different dynamic between men and women. Like women expect a man to be a man. Right. Or they have respect for the father of the family. There's a patriarch of the father, like, you know, mommy and poppy kind of thing. Then you go and you look at a country like Argentina, which is like still technically a Latin country and very much Catholic, but it is overrun by feminists right now. And some of the most radical feminism. So yeah, some of the most radical feminism on the planet is in Argentina right now. So what the reason I'm making those two comparisons there is that, again, it's the global sexual marketplace. So even though you are in a Latin culture and that's the way you do things in your country, or that's the way you've been brought up, doesn't mean that it isn't also subject to the global sexual marketplace, because everybody is looking at YouTube now. Everybody is looking at is online. Anyone who has a smartphone can participate in the global sexual marketplace to some degree, whether they even realize that they are or they aren't. You're still going to have that westernized, gynocentric messaging narrative, whatever, embedded in your participation. And even if your participation is just watching videos or reading something, you're still having even though you believe in a patriarchal sort of, you know, existence between men and women, you're still seeing that messaging, and that's something that's going to, at least in some way, influence your life, or it's going to color your life. I think
we're getting close to the end here, buddy.
That was it. Yeah, we should tighten things up here. What do we got going on? We got we're changing.
Your time period with me changes next week, because
we're changing.
Tuesday, my show goes from 7 to noon, Monday through Friday. That's Central Time. So you're going to be on with me at 10 a.m. Central on Friday, which is 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, so we're switching
your time moving forward,
which means I get to sleep in an extra 2 hours.
4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that's nice. I'll get up at 6:30 now.
There you go.
Yeah, so that'll be changing on Fridays for our show on your show, I should say. And when are you moving into the new studios?
Probably December. They're building brand new state-of-the-art facilities. They're going to be. It's almost going to be like a glass pod.
Oh, wow.
It's got video all hooked up, so we can do. I mean, if I got you into town, we could do, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Right there. I mean,
yeah, I definitely want to make a trip out there for, like, you know, to do an in studio at some point. Maybe we do that next year, whenever you're already settled in. But yeah, that sounds like a lot. Sounds like a good time. Let's say that.
So what do you have this week? Do you have a Q&A? You were doing
I'm going to be doing, it's not so much a Q&A. I'm going to be doing my solo show. Solo with Rollo. Yeah. Somebody threw that out there. I'll be doing Solo with Rollo on Thursdays. It will be at 3:00 Pacific, 6:00 Eastern. And so that'll be on Thursday.
Is it topics or is it just like open forum?
I don't know. I'm usually, this is the way it happens. I'll start off with like the first 20 minutes talking about a topic, and then everybody starts throwing questions at me. So probably we'll start off with a topic and do it like that. And then Rule Zero, of course, is on Saturdays. I don't know who's hosting yet. I think it's probably Ryan's turn. So Ryan will be the next up. And then, of course, we're doing our show every Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. So if you have not hit the like button, please do. If you have not,
social media.
Yes. Good one. Actually, let me put those up there real quick. Hit the like button. Also, that's the Irrational Male. That's my blog. And that's my books. If you guys want to support the show in any way, the best way to do it is, if you don't want to make any kind of financial contribution, at least go and give me a good review on Amazon. That helps the show out a lot. Also, copy and paste the URL for YouTube, because we will definitely be demonetized, and paste that in your Twitter feed or anywhere on social media. That would help us out as well. Also, if you haven't purchased the books, please go ahead to Amazon and you'll find my authors page there. I've got 3 books in the Rational Male series. And if you want to buy other ones for your friends, please do. Let's see. Oh, also, finally, I am now on Facebook. I actually have a real account on Facebook now. So, and you'll see right here, that's where I can be found. Pat is at PC1170. On Twitter.
Facebook.com/PC1170. Same on Twitter. Twitter.com/PC1170.
And that's our show.
Are you posting my show that you do with me Friday on your Facebook page too?
Yes.
Should be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Find
all
it there.
Time, always.
By the way, real quick, great story. I had a lady contact me Friday. She couldn't find the show that we just did. She's a homeschooler. She's got 3 or 4 boys. They all listen to the show every Friday, or they listen to it on the podcast, because she wanted to know. She says, at what age should I start, let one of my boys read the book, right? And I told her what I said at the Patriarchs Convention. I said, 13, 14. I said, break it down chapter by chapter. Told her about Audible books. And I said, you got to beware, though. I said, they got a couple of F-bombs in there. She goes, my boys have no problem with that. Yeah. So she didn't think that was a bad deal. But she's got just boys. No. She's pushing this stuff, she says, because society is not. So
yeah, my editor for book 4 right now has mentioned, he says, there is like no swear words. There's no swear words in this. I go, yeah, that's fine. I did that intentionally, because I'm aiming. I'm also, just so everybody knows, I'm still working on book 4 right now. It's really coming along pretty well. I just got the first draft back, and now I get to go back and do all of my edits and everything. So we're moving along. We're making progress here. But yeah, my editor says, there's a surprising lack of swear words in this. And I go, yeah, because I want to aim it towards a religious market at some point too. So, okay, guys, thank you very much. And we will see you next week, guys. Bye-bye.